Welcome back to the channel. As the title of this video prompts, this is going to be a bit of a mixed bag. I'm going to cover a few different things. At some point I'm going to get into a little discussion on the importance of ritual because I mentioned it in a previous video. But to start off with, it seemed very important to me to mention something that happened to me last night. So last night I was doing some research on the subject matter. I was reading a book by someone that I don't know very well, but I've watched a lot of her videos, and she strikes me as being someone who's really knowledgeable where spirituality and the practice of magic is concerned. So I'm reading one of her books, and I'm enjoying it for the most part. You know, like this book specifically is about different types of divination. And so I get to this section in this book where she starts talking about working with tarot cards and oracle cards, and there's a statement in this book, and they're harking back to the other videos here on this channel. I've mentioned how powerful belief can be, and how if you allow a limiting belief into your mind, into your awareness and your energy field, if you adopt that belief, whether you mean to or not, that can limit your ability because you allow it. Like you're manifesting and creating, whatever it is that you believe. So having said that, there was a statement in this book, in this section, where basically she says, she's talking about reading tarot cards, and she's like, you'll have to do this for lots of years before you get really good at it. And reading that, I had to put the book down. I mean, like, I'm going to keep reading it and finishing it, but I'm saying, like, I had to pause and sort of step away from it because I know from my own personal experience that that is simply not true. There again, as I've mentioned in some of the other videos here, I certainly don't mind sharing with you my own past with working with oracle cards, because that was a huge part of how things started to click for me on a spiritual level. Quite literally, I learned how to channel and read cards, in like 2 years. And there again, this wasn't 2 years of constant work. I will say, the more work you put into it, the faster you will learn and the better that you can get at it. But for me, it just didn't go that way. I spent several months doing daily readings for people when I was learning how to do these readings. But another important part here, no one out there taught me. I was taught to read cards by spirit, like via intuition and the messages and the energy that was coming through from spirit. I never took a class on tarot cards. I didn't have a book on reading cards. Now granted, there is a little difference between tarot and oracle. Having said that, definitely you can read tarot cards the same way that I approach reading oracle cards. And I feel like if you've made that connection with spirit correctly, or whatever deities you work with, you're going to get that channeled information, and you're going to be able to read that card. There again, whether or not you know, quote unquote, the traditional meaning of that card. You could also go as far as to say that if it's done correctly, even as you're shuffling the cards, that is also part of that practice of magic. So you're going to shuffle the cards in a way that the cards that that person needs to see or hear about that you're reading for, those cards are going to manifest in your deck so that you lay them out. I mean, there are a lot of views on that. Personally, I don't think that it matters on that note. I'm going to mention some more about reading cards later in this video, but I wanted to touch on that because there again, these videos primarily are for people who are new on their spiritual path. And so, that has been an important lesson for me. When you're learning and reading and exploring this subject matter, if you come across a belief that empowers you, that you feel drawn to, that's great. That may help you. It may not be a belief that you carry throughout your entire practice, but at least for that moment, if you feel on an intuitive level that you're drawn to that or that it resonates with you, certainly so be it. That is good. Alternatively, if you come across a belief that feels limiting to you or disempowering, you really need to set that aside. Like, do whatever you can do to unwire that conditioning of that belief, because the truth of it is irrelevant. What's much more important is whether or not you allow that idea to affect what you do. If it affects your confidence and your belief in yourself and what you're capable of and what you can do, I mean, you sort of lost before you started. So bear that in mind. And as I always say, this, I don't want to say it's quote unquote a warning, but this statement inherently, it includes these videos and these messages that I'm trying to share with people, because there's a potential that the information that I share won't resonate with you, and if it doesn't, so be it. Walk your path. That's the best advice I think anyone could ever give you. So yeah, having said all that, let me get back into my notes here and see what else I was going to share. So yeah, like I said earlier, I mentioned ritual in a video the other day, and I said something to the effect of, if you're interested in strengthening your intuition and doing some of this spiritual work, ritual is not it's not a certainty, it's not a must-have thing that you do. Having said that, I felt it was important to mention in this video that doesn't mean that ritual is completely irrelevant or useless. The main reason that I put that in that other video is that for me, my own experience on my own path, when I started, I had a lot of books that talked about doing ritual, and I tried to do some for myself, and I found the process very intimidating and difficult and stressful. Now, granted, that was just me and like my perception and my path, but to some degree it was almost a hindrance for me, because what you find is, there again, it's a ritual, it's a thing that you do. Depending on how you approach that, it can become a tiresome thing to keep trying to do this stuff and not being able to intuitively feel the energies or like know that a spirit is there with you or that you're making progress. For me, honestly, it was a hardship. And here's another aspect of that too, and I mentioned it in the other video. Bear in mind that especially older rituals that you will read about, I mean, there's all this stuff that they say that you have to have, a certain type of dagger that's laden with gold and etched, with these symbols and like all this incense and stuff. All those things are useful additives to a ritual, but they are not must-haves. It's very obvious that now in our society, people do rituals in a lot of different ways. Some use some of those ingredients and tools, and some don't. And from what I understand, everyone has success in what they do. A lot of it comes down to what you believe. I personally now, in my own practice, do rituals, and I've simplified what I do. So it's not super complicated, it's not really hard. I can stay in the space that I need to be in when I focus and when I do it, and that works for me. So harken back to what was said just a while ago, do what works for you. But I did want to touch on some important things regarding ritual, like some of my views of what you can gain from doing it. So let me look over these notes again. Got a lot of stuff scribbled out here. Emily is here as well as usual. She says hello. So here's one thing, first and foremost. As I mentioned in some other videos about the notion of reading cards, doing that practice, and how it can and will strengthen your intuition the more that you do it. To some degree, the same is true with ritual, but I feel like it's on a much broader scale. If you can get to a place where you find a ritual or an approach to ritual that works for you, you're incorporating a lot of different elements. I mean, you're incorporating, in my opinion, if it's done right, you're doing visualization, you're also using intuition, and you're just sort of stretching those magical abilities and talents, because you're reaching out to spirit, you're calling on certain spirits. There's probably some meditation or some chanting or drumming or something involved in the center of your ritual. I mean, so you're doing a lot of different magical practices all in one. Hopefully it's a sacred, protected space. But yeah, there again, just like reading with the cards, the more that you do that practice, I feel like you're going to strengthen your abilities in your practice by doing so. So I wanted to mention that. Now we'll harken back to what I had mentioned earlier about the author. I was reading some of her work. from what I understand, from what she said in some of her own YouTube videos, and I'll link again to her thing, she does ritual every day, which blew me away when she said that. I was like, what the hell? And I don't know a whole lot specifically about her personal practice and exactly what she does in her ritual. I do know from what I understand from what she said in some of her other videos, like she has a temple room in her home. She's designated a room that she does ritual work in. And I think to some degree that's something that I may adopt for myself in my own practice in the future. For the most part these days, right now, it's summer moving into fall, but the weather has been conducive for me to be outside doing my ritual work, and so I've done it outside. That adds other layers of complexity because you've got to get that space ready for the work itself, and then you've got to worry there again about the weather. Is it going to be right or wrong? You got to set up, sort of the stage of it, and it can be complicated. There again, that's another thing to mention as far as a magical and a spiritual path. If you overly complicate your work in the beginning, you're going to be very likely you're going to run into a space where you're like, oh wow, I'm exhausting all this energy and this effort into this. And if you're not in the space where your intuitive abilities are strong and you can actually sense and connect to spirit, it's sort of like working a job for like 6 months and not getting paid, and not knowing that your work is building on anything, like not being able to see any sort of results from that. So that's what I would say. Be mindful of that. If you're open to doing ritual, I think it can be a great thing. And ultimately, I would suggest that you do it if you're going to walk a spiritual path. But keep it simple, at least at first. And ultimately, there again, find what works for you, what resonates, and set the rest of it aside. Okay, that really covered a lot of what I wanted to get into here. Let me make sure I didn't miss something. So here's another part of that on doing ritual and stuff, and this goes back to the last video that I posted about trying to forge a sincere connection to the spirits that you work with. The thing is, these spirits are with us. They're everywhere and they're always around. Like, they're always aware of what we're doing, particularly when we start reaching out and trying to work with them. In some instances, they're there before then. But the point here is that they're always paying attention. And so if you're like, oh, okay, there's this spirit that I feel drawn to that I want to work with, if you take the time and energy to actually get, your ritual stuff out, set up the space, and then go and do your ritual, basically what you're saying to that spirit on a symbolic way, on a symbolic level, is, I'm serious about this. I really want to connect to you. I really want to hear your voice. I want to channel messages from you. Like, I'm willing to invest and work hard for this relationship and connection with you. And that is powerful. I'm getting cold chills now on this side of my body. Here again, for me, that's confirmation from spirit. The work that you put into your spiritual path will always be manifested, but you have to put in that work. That is super important. And a ritual is a powerful way to do that. I'll share a personal story with you on this note. Let me take a breath though, because there again, this is personal. And it's a weird coincidence because certain things occur today concerning this. I may have to have some tea to get into it, so bear with me. I want to give you the short version of this because I don't want to ramble on about my own past and experiences too much. So how to put this in perspective? Basically, there was a situation in my past where I was connected with someone on a relationship level, and this was years ago. We're talking 20 years ago that I met this person, and that our connection became very strong ultimately, and so we've known each other for a long time. There was a lot of back and forth. Ultimately, I think both of us realized the relationship itself and the friendship to some degree was sort of flawed, and there was just a lot of problems because neither of us were fully willing and able at different times to let go. So we were doing the whole friends with benefits thing sometimes, and like there was just always that constant level of emotion and connection. And finally, I reached a point where I was like, look, I mean, this can't go on. And I feel like she did too. I mean, she was in the same mental space. So anyway, I reached out to other people in the spiritual, groups that I'm in and stuff, looking for some help and some advice on this. Someone ended up doing a reading for me, and the message that came through from Spirit was that I needed to do a ritual, like a very serious ritual, to cut those etheric and energetic ties that I had made with this person. Not in a negative way, not to harm them or harm myself, but simply to close that wall so that her and I could both heal and move forward in our lives. The thing is, I had spent hours and hours of prayer to Spirit for this very reason. And I mentioned that to the person that was reading for me. I mean, because I sort of felt like, oh, I've done this work. Like I've been invested in trying to change this situation. What this person said to me blew me away, and I'm getting more cold chills now. Basically, they said what I said just a second ago, in that sometimes you got to get really serious and dedicated. You have to go that extra mile of doing, sometimes a complicated ritual in order to get the result that you need, because that shifts you into an emotional space where you're psychologically and spiritually completely in alignment with that desire, like whatever it is, whether you're manifesting money or love or happiness, or I mean, it really doesn't matter what it is, but sometimes you have to really work hard to get to that zone where it will work, and then when you do, there it is. But there again, I feel like these spirits that we work with, sometimes they want to see that level of dedication and seriousness, and if you can show them that, you'll be blown away by the things that will happen there, and the signs and synchronicities, the miracles and the changes that can come into your life, because you're putting forth effort. So yeah, I wanted to mention that. Let me see. I want to make sure that I got everything here. Okay, yeah, here's another part. We'll keep this. This doesn't include, a long-winded personal story. Another thing about doing ritual work, particularly if you do it in the same space or the same area, what you do in that essence, to a degree, you're creating a sort of vibrational resonance of magical power, your own energy as well as the energies that the spirits that you work with, their energies and their vibration, especially if you work with the same ones, that can infuse a space with a lot of magical power. And so there again, the repetition is important. It's sort of like going to the gym every day and working out. You're building muscle over a longer period of time, depending on your workout and what you do. But I'm saying that the continual practice matters. Sometimes, as I said earlier, it's hard to see and be aware of the changes taking place and the growth that's happening, but it is happening. The point is to have faith and just to do the work. If you're willing to do the work, you can receive benefits from having a spiritual path. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to get into with ritual. There again, in this video, I'm not going to get into the rituals that I do. You can go online and find all sorts of information about ritual work. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, if you're new, keep it simple. I mean, go into ritual, cast a circle. I would say that just to make sure that you are safe, especially if you're new, because when you're new, you may or may not be intuitively aware enough to know whether or not energies move into your space that you don't want there. And there again, if you don't have a strong connection with spirit, those spirits may not be there to watch over you. But yeah, keep it simple. I mean, move into your ritual space, cast your circle, call out to the elements if you're open to that. I normally call out to the guardians of the watchtowers. I will call out to angels that are attributed to those different directions. I'll call out to the god and the goddess, and then I'll call out to Lucy. This is the new part of my practice now. So, but yeah, call out to the spirits that you want to work with, and then just, I mean, let your ritual be whatever it is, whatever it needs to be for you. So yeah, that's all. That's all I wanted to get into with ritual, at least in this video. I may do another video later with more info on that, or sharing one of my rituals. It just depends on what comes through. There is one final thing that I wanted to mention here. I'm thinking of how to word this. There was a video that I watched today, and I'll link to it. This video is by a woman named Annie. She's done a ton of videos on spirituality, particularly paganism and Wicca, connecting to the god and the goddess, circle, celebrating the holidays. Just like there's such a wealth of information on this woman's channel. I would definitely recommend that you go and check out her channel, watch some of her videos. I feel like if you're at all connected to your own intuition, you'll feel some resonance and you'll be able to pick up on that wisdom. So, but anyway, she did a video that I watched today, and it was all about, to some degree, it was about connecting with other people, in spiritual groups and building those relationships, having that connection and that dialogue, that exchange of ideas and things. And it really touched me. It was very powerful. And it's another synchronicity, because there was someone who posted a thing on Facebook a while back, and I was led to this page randomly of another person who does readings with cards. And so I went to that person's page and I was looking over it, and I felt intuitively drawn to reach out to this person. And I noticed that they had mentioned that they were open to exchanging services, meaning, like if you do readings, or if you sell, spiritual jewelry or crafts or things, like they might be open to doing a reading for you in exchange for something that you would share with them. And so immediately, intuitively, I felt that pull and that draw to reach out to this person and offer that exchange, and so I did. That exchange was really powerful. The reading that I did for her, she felt like, was definitely spot on. She really enjoyed it. She was emotional. I was emotional. Like, it was very intense, that energetic exchange. And then she did a reading for me tonight, and it was very similar. I got cold chills during her reading for me, and I feel like she very, what's the word? I'm trying to think of how to word this correctly. Basically, her reading was spot on. I mean, she reached into the situation. There was clarity and insight given to me about things that have been going on in my life, and as it usually goes, if it's done right. This person doesn't know anything about me. She doesn't know anything about any kind of obstacles that I've been dealing with, but it came through in the reading in a powerful way. So I'm going to link her Facebook page in the description of this video. I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for someone, to do a reading, be open to going and giving her page a look over. And there was another part of that I want to get into as well. One of the interesting things about this reading with this woman, it surprised me because I'd never heard of this before. I knew about it when I went to her page, because she had talked about it. The thing is, she does her readings with Pokemon cards, and I had never heard of that before. I was like, how do you do that, So her and I talked a little bit about it, and so now I've had some time to process, and she did the reading for me, so I sort of see how that came through in the cards. And then there was this intuitive message that came through from Lucy about that whole experience, and here's the truth of that matter. It really doesn't matter what tool you use to do a reading for another person. The core of it is your intuition. Realistically, a talented reader could do a reading for another person with a phone book. And the irony here is that I was thinking about this when I was making these notes and stuff, and that came through to Lucy. Those words you will have to put into practice at some point. There again, I don't feel like Lucy's going to say you're going to have to do readings with a phone book forever and ever. But at some point, you may very well on this channel see a video where I do a reading with someone or for someone with a phone book. The thing is, it's not specifically about the tools. Now, tools are great, just like going back to ritual. Ritual is a really good thing. But there are deeper levels of it. Like, I'm super grateful for my cards. I love my deck. I feel very connected to it, and I use it. I mean, time and time again. Having said that, I have done readings for people without any tools whatsoever. I found it to be more challenging, but I also know it's possible, and I know the only reason that it's challenging is because I've grown accustomed to using the cards, because I've grown accustomed to using the tools, and so the hard part there is trusting what you bring through. Like, that takes work and effort. That's why I will say, do as many readings as you can. Do at least 1 or 2 readings a day when you get started, because you're building a strong foundation. You're strengthening those abilities, in a very positive way. But yeah, the whole point of that ramble is, don't be dissuaded. If you hear that someone is using, a deck of oracle cards, or they're reading tea leaves, or there again, a phone book, it's solely not about the tools that a person uses. It's much more so about, are they connected to whatever beings that they work with? Is that channel very strong? Like, are they able to bring through those messages? The tools oftentimes are just a springing board. For me, when I do my readings with my cards, I'll turn the card over and I'll look at it, and a lot of times something will come through with the name of the card, depending. Sometimes the card is reversed or whatever. Normally I'll close my eyes once I glance at the card, because the card is just like, it's a little flash, it's a little indication, and then the truth of the message, I'm getting cold chills now again on this side of the body, the truth of the message is going to come from spirit. Whatever spirits or energies or beings you work with, there is where that intuitive power comes from, I feel like, at least in my practice. So yeah, be mindful of that, and be open to experimenting. Yeah, I think I've rambled on enough in this video about ritual and tarot cards and things of that nature. So as I always say, if you enjoyed the video, please take the time to like the video. Make sure that you subscribe if you want to subscribe to the channel. There again, those things. Also, leave a comment if you have a comment or a question, if you approach reading in a different way, especially if you do reading with other different types of cards, playing cards, or some unknown deck, or if you're reading tea leaves, whatever it is. If you want to share that and have a discussion about it, leave a comment. I will reply. Therein, beyond the interest and the inclination to have that discussion, when you get likes and comments on your videos, it helps other people to find the work. This, there again, is not about me at all, but it's about this spiritual information reaching those that need to receive it. So, yeah. Thank you again for your time and attention. Thank you for being with me. I hope that Spirit blesses all of you with a lovely evening. I will talk to you soon.